Welcome back. So in the first video, we rushed through a bunch of things so that you can create call blitzes in Rehearse, which was we created buyer bot groups, right? So we created like this whole group at once. And in the last video, you also learned a little bit more about how to do this, one bot at a time. And we learned how to quickly create assessments like scorecards, objections, and questions. We saw where those assessments live or where we can see those assessments, which is primarily in the in the call logs and in the analytics where you can actually see the knowledge gaps, etc. of the calls, right? But in this video, I just want to focus on how to create really good quality assessments for your team. Okay, so let's begin with what these assessments are. As we learned in the last video, these assessments can be associated with scenarios, so that when you call a given scenario, if you have associated, like, let's say, scorecards, question sets, objection sets with this given scenario, what Rehearse does is it will randomly pick between 3 to 6 questions and 3 to 6 objections and all the scorecards that you've associated when it's making the call. And the buyer bot is going to randomly ask between those questions for each call. And then for the next call, it's again going to randomly pick between 3 to 6 questions, 3 to 6 objections, and all the scorecards, show that to you, raise a few of those questions and objections. Then in the next call, randomly pick between questions, objections, etc. Right? So it goes that way. So when your reps have made enough calls, you can always go back to the analytics section, look at all the scores. Is it increasing? Is it decreasing? And then you can also look at the knowledge gaps. So we saw, in the first video, how do you analyze these knowledge gaps, right? If this green stuff, and below this, you will see the yellow stuff as well, right? For example, in the scorecards, this green stuff, if it's longer than the yellow stuff, then you know that there's a gap. What is the gap? The gap is essentially the number of times this thing occurred versus the number of times the reps could not answer the thing that was supposed to occur, okay? And then once you know this, you can go back to your reps and coach them on, the things that they lack, right? So let's go back to the assessments and let's focus on how do you create these things and what are the best practices. Let's first focus on scorecards. Scorecards, when you associate them with scenarios, all of them will be evaluated live during the call, as well as at the end of the call in the call logs and analytics, right? As we know. But what are scorecards, right? How do you even create them? So scorecards are essentially the things that you want or the elements that you want to happen in the calls. These are not exactly, word by word things that need to happen in the call exactly, but these are actions that you expect the reps to do or the best practices that you have that converts better. For example, this is a really great example here that I have on the screen, which is you want to check if the reps have used a permission-based opener or not. And if you have a specific permission-based opener, you can also put that in the evaluation criteria. For example, the rep asks for 30 seconds for the prospect's time is what you consider a permission-based opener. So if your reps will ask for 27 seconds, it's going to mark it as incomplete because you have done the research, you've analyzed the call, you know that, asking 30 seconds works, asking 27 seconds does not work, right? This is a very, trivial example. Obviously, it doesn't really make sense for 27 seconds to work versus 30, but if you have a very specific thing, you can put it in here. Okay. The same thing's true with, let's say you want to make sure that the reps always mention the company name. Sometimes, some people disagree. Some people want the company name to not be mentioned. So you can put in here that the company's name is DataWiz, and I want that to be mentioned in the calls, and you want to track all the calls where the thing has not been mentioned, and then score it according to that. Same thing, again, one of the best practices in the closing is, did the rep make sure that the prospect accepted the invite while on the call, right? That increases the show rate. So that's one of the best practices that you can put in. And I can expand upon it. An invite is accepted when the prospect confirms that they received the email, or you can go at one more step and say that prospect confirms the invite and it shows up in their calendar, etc. You can go into the details so that your reps make sure that they have accepted the invite and it's showing up as marked in the calendar, etc. So this is just the best practices, and these things can be huge, right? If you are prospecting for a complex product, you can have a bunch of best practices programmed in that need to happen. You need to enforce them in every single call, and you can mark them as different sets. Now remember, one of the things that is sometimes confusing to people is when you add a card, it seems like you're adding an item. You're not adding an item. You're adding a category of things, like, it could be pitch, and that's all you have to do. And then pitch as a card will be added right here. And within the card, you add items that belong to that section of the call, which is pitch. Ideally, you have these cards based on sections or segments of the call, like opener, pitch, close, etc. That's the typical thing, but you can also have other things, right? You can have other categories. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, you can go back to the home page. When you're creating the scenario, at the end, you get to associate those cards with the scenario, like opener, pitch, etc. And those cards and the items within those cards will be evaluated at the end of every call, and it will also show up live while the rep is on the call. Okay. So hopefully how to set up the scorecards and this part is clear. You can add the card which is the cart category. Within that, you can add these, items. And within the items, if you want like a specific evaluation criteria, so that you know that, okay, this is exactly why, where you need to mark it as complete versus, no other way, you can put that in here. Hopefully that's clear. The next thing is objections and questions. These are similar, but these are different than scorecards. Okay. The objections is, again, you add an objection set. These could be discovery call objections, cold call objections, a certain product based objections, whatever it is, right? It's still a set. Within the set, you add these items. And what happens is when you associate these objections or questions to a scenario, right? Right here, I've got this set associated, this question set associated. What happens is Rehearse is going to randomly pick between 3 to 6 objections from this set, right? Whatever is the associated set. If you have like 3 sets of objections associated, I can create more objection sets. If I have 3 sets, it's still going to pick up 3 to 6 total objections from all these sets combined, and 3 to 6 questions, right? From the question set that is associated to scenario when you're doing the call blitz, right? So when you're doing the blitz, for every single call, it's randomly going to pick 3 to 6 questions, 3 to 6 objections, and try to throw that within the call. Okay, so for the next call, again, it's going to repeat that. For the next call, again, it's going to repeat that. And in the back end, what it's doing is it's collecting the data of how many of those questions occurred in the call, were asked, the objections occurred, and how many were handled by the rep. Okay, and that is exactly what you see in the knowledge gaps. So let's say your reps are sitting and making like 100, 200 calls, sitting on the call blitz. At the end of the day, you will know exactly, the knowledge gaps that your reps have, because those objection questions, since they're randomly picked and you have made hundreds of calls, they all have occurred evenly. We make sure of that. And then you'll clearly see that, okay, yeah, this thing occurred like 100 times and my rep handled it like 10 times. That's ridiculous. That's a massive gap that I need to work on. And I need to go back to my reps and, tell them that, hey, this is the problem. And as we showed in the first video, or I think second video, you can also choose the member of the team and the scenario, and you can go like in specific detail. Okay, for this scenario, for this guy, what's the big gap? Where are they faltering? Right? So hopefully you now understand how to properly create these scorecards, how to create these objections, how to create these questions. Now, here's a tip that I have for you. When you're creating these questions and objections, one thing that you can do, and I can help you do this, by the way, so you can always book a call and we'll figure this out, is if you're using a tool like Gong or any similar tool or even your dialer, and you have access to the cold call transcriptions, let's say the past 300, 400, 500 cold call transcriptions, right? If you have access to that, then I can help you analyze all those calls and extract out all the questions that were asked in these calls. And usually what happens is when you extract, let's say 500 call transcripts, you will end up getting only 20 to 30 questions and 20 to 30 objections at most. So that means that these are the only questions or objections that are possibly going to be asked in the calls. It's not that much. And if you have those calls, then I would encourage you to go to Gong or any of these tools and ask it or figure it out how to do this to get you all the possible questions or objections that were raised in the calls, and then we can paste that in, and that will make Rehearse killer for your team, right? Because then you can literally, the calls that were made on Rehearse will be exactly like the calls that your reps are making. The objections questions will be exactly like, they get in the actual call. It will be absolute chef's kiss, right? So if you have that, then it will be beautiful. So let me know if you have that, and I would love to help you, figure that out and set this up for your team. So you can always, book a time with me. But yeah, those are the details that I just wanted to get in. And in the next video, we're going to talk a little bit about workspaces and how to organize Rehearse for, let's say, different teams. Let's say you've got a SMB team. Let's say you have AEs and CSMs and different teams. Maybe you have SMB, mid-market, enterprise teams, etc. Whatever you want to categorize this with. Obviously, it doesn't make sense to mix everything up together. Like, the SMB and the CSM have completely different types of bots that need to be created, etc. So in the next video, I'm going to show you how to do that by creating these different workspaces, which are completely isolated sandboxes in which your teams can live, how to invite members of your team, and I'll go a little bit details about the plans and pricing of Rehearse. So again, looking forward to spam you with the next video, and I hope to see you soon.